Hey everybody, my name is Rick St. Clair, host of Listen Up Elora, and today I have with me the mighty talented Nolan Gibson.
Hey
Nolan.
folks, how's it going?
Yeah, thanks so much for joining the call here and for your willingness to participate and listen up. Really excited to talk with you. So, for anyone who's not familiar with your music, I'd like you to tell the audience about you. Tell us your story right from the beginning.
Okay. Ooh, so I would say around 9, 10 years old,
Mhm.
I got my first bass guitar, which was not my
Yeah.
parents' preference. My dad would have really liked me to pick up acoustic, but I
Mhm.
fought him on that for a few years. And then he gifted me an acoustic, and I started playing that, working on songs. And to give people an idea, my dad was kind of a Tom Petty, John Prine kind of fan.
Nice.
And so I would have heard a lot of that growing up. He would have sang around the campfire and stuff like that. So I have a lot of fond memories and definitely a lot of John Prine influence in my writing.
Yeah.
Uh, Later on, I would say around 14 is when I started performing live. Mostly electric. I kind of got into the blues for a bit there. So I would say, yeah, throughout high school, it was blues mixed with whatever my high school band wanted to play,
Okay.
really. Because high school bands rarely have a genre specific thing. They're just like, what can we pull off?
Yeah.
Um, and then I would say it wouldn't have been until getting into adulthood where I was really writing. Like I did write some songs as a kid. None of them I'm super proud of now, but it's all relative to where you're at.
Sure.
Um, and yeah, since I say the age of 18 and now, how do I sum that up? I now host a songwriters series here
Yeah.
in Port Dover. Um, I have played a number of writers' rounds at other places and other showcases as well. I've opened up for David Wilcox and Lotus White for
Yeah.
folks in folk scene. Really big fan of Lotus. And yeah, I also play as a side guy with Olivia Mae Graham. She's a country artist, and
Yeah.
as we were talking a little bit beforehand, I
Yeah.
just got back from the CMAOs, which,
Yeah.
for people that don't know, is Country Music Association of Ontario, their award show and conference in Port Credit.
Yeah.
So yeah, I I think that's a decent summary.
Yeah, no, that's great. And maybe we can dig a little bit to that. So, I guess it sounds like, from your youngest years, your memories of, getting exposed to music. Certainly your dad had a big influence on you with, Tom Petty, John Prine, a lot of folk influence there for sure. And, getting into the blues. And can definitely relate to what you're talking about, perhaps growing up in a small town, smaller community where it's like you kind of just play what there's a scene for like what's
Yeah,
available, right? And what like other people want to do because that's part of being in a band, right? It's like playing in a group, you got to kind of work with other people and maybe you're like me, you like a lot of different music too, right? So then you kind of get into different things. Um, but then I guess at what point did you kind of get into the shift of saying, okay, like now I really want to pursue this, kind of let's just use the umbrella term of folk music, but nestled in that is like, your country, your bluegrass inspirations, all these other things that you're, pulling into your music now.
yeah. So I guess I did leave something out. I always tend to leave at least one thing out, and the one thing I left out is about 4 or 5 years ago. That would have been middle to end of COVID, I believe, if I got my timeline correct here. My dear friend Eric Russo, he comes from a bluegrass family,
Okay.
and he was playing bass in like funk bands for years, but he was getting back into bluegrass because he was just playing by himself, right? So playing bass by yourself can sometimes not be super entertaining.
Yeah.
And he started getting me into that, and so I was trying to figure out guitar. I actually bought a mandolin because I thought I would be more useful to other musicians if I was playing the instrument that most musicians don't play.
Sure. It's a good idea. Yeah.
Uh, so I did that for about 3 or 4 years, and I would say that was the shift from me primarily thinking of myself as an electric guitar player to a complete 180. I barely touch electrics now, and
Yeah.
uh, now I'm mostly acoustic. I think bluegrass really taught me how to pull a lot out of the instrument, where before I thought it was just this limited instrument that I
Right.
couldn't do all the electric things I wanted to on because it was too hard
Yes.
to do. But now I kind of see it the opposite, and it's kind of trained me to be a better acoustic and electric player.
Sure.
Uh, so I would say, yeah, there was that 4 to 5 year period where I was in a bluegrass duo with Eric.
Yeah.
And I subbed in with his band a couple times, High Banks Bluegrass.
Okay.
Um, and then I think I had a hand injury from playing mandolin,
Okay.
um, mostly because I was getting to play with people that have been doing this since they were kids.
Mhm.
So it's a high endurance,
Yeah.
high energy uh, genre, and I was stress squeezing, as I would say, where you're like playing too hard.
Yes.
Um,
Yeah.
and I've actually had an injury before from blues playing because I didn't really have a formal teacher. So that kind of made me stop and slow down and kind of think about what can I do with less, even though I'm healed now and I'm good.
Yeah.
For a little bit there, I was like, okay, how am I going to gig this year?
Right.
So that's where I kind of focused on being more of a folk songwriter, and that's also where my songwriters rounds came out of because I wanted to have an opportunity to still be involved.
Yes. Yeah, and I mean, bluegrass is like a very you know, like dedicated platform, let's say, of music, right? So, there are people who do newgrass and kind of like fusion and things like that and make it their own. But if you're playing like really trad bluegrass, it's kind of like, okay, you've got, your lane and you kind of stick to it, right?
Yeah,
Especially if you're dealing with like, purists and even between old time and bluegrass, like people will fight over what's what, and like
yeah,
these traditions, right? So, you know, uh, from like a creative perspective, it's interesting to be able to get creative within these constraints or these pillars of a genre, let's say, right? But it can also sometimes be limiting, right? Because you have to do what people want and what people expect to a degree, right? If you're playing for these types of audiences that are really purist or like care to hear it in a certain way, right? They just want to hear it the way Scruggs did it.
yeah.
Uh, and so I respect that, right? It's almost like jazz where there's like like your standards, right? And so you have like,
Mhm.
these idioms and expectations of the music and the genre and these kind of, sort of guardrails around things. Um, I have another friend who actually played at Listen Up, and we talked a little bit about that in his journey. He started in a bluegrass band called the Brakemen, which is based out in BC. This is around the time that "Oh Brother, Where Art Thou" came out, and that record was like really great for like popularizing banjos and bluegrass and like Americana folk music at that time, right? And there was kind of a resurgence of that, which sort of came a little bit from that movie, right? But they eventually sort of evolved into more of like an indie folk sort of sound because they wanted to expand their like, their palettes and their creativity, right? So, yeah, I can kind of understand how, some of these experiences you would have had would have kind of shaped your direction and where you went. That being said, you do a lot of mean picking in your original music, right? So let's maybe shift gears now and have you talk a little bit about your actual songs, right? Just so for people have some context, we met each other, I guess, through Instagram, kind of, but
Yeah,
well, no, I guess it was more so email. So at first, we connected through the Dog Eared Cafe.
yeah,
Uh, I expressed that I was interested in performing there and looking for someone to partner up with, being new to the community. And they partnered us up together, and we kind of connected, I guess, on Instagram after that fact. And I got a chance to hear you play your music, which was really, really outstanding. Wonderful singing, picking, songwriting, all of these things. Like you're really, really are like very holistic, well-rounded musician. Really, really enjoyed your music. And yeah, so tell us about your songwriting, any specific songs, that you want to discuss. I've been sharing a couple different ones on, social media to help promote this event coming up on Friday. But yeah, let's talk about your songwriting, maybe your originals, any, recordings that you have, in progress or your projects that way. Yeah.
yeah. I I think I'll start with one tune, "Dear Drugs and Dietary Restrictions,"
Yeah,
which is always a crowd favorite. I
yeah,
usually win people over before I've started that one. I just have to say the title, and people get a kick out of that one.
yeah.
Um, I think that's a good place to start because it plays into my John Prine influence,
Mhm.
and also um, an angle I took with my songwriting. I want to say starting maybe 2 years ago,
Yeah.
where I felt like I was writing a lot of sad songs, which
Mhm.
is a common thing for songwriters because when you're happy, you're just busy being happy.
Yeah.
And when you're sad, you want to purge it from you and be happy again, or at least
Yeah.
content. So, uh, Dear Drugs and Dietary Restrictions is kind of a silly, goofy love song for my partner.
Mhm.
And I needed it to be silly and goofy, and because I needed to make myself chuckle when writing it because of again that thing of like to just write a song like I'm so happy everything is great is really something I really struggle to put into enough words
Sure.
to even make a song.
Sure.
Um, so it's a yeah, I would say this song's kind of it's a love song, but it's kind of pokes a little fun too.
Mhm.
And I like that kind of quirky, fun wordplay that I would have been inspired by John Prine in that kind of way. That he's got tunes like "Frying Pan" that come to mind, or maybe
Yeah.
"Spanish Pipe Dream."
Yeah.
Uh, so that's one of my tunes, and there is a recording, a live performance of it that I did at the Crown and Press in Hamilton just
Yes.
a
That's the
couple
one of the
months
videos I've
ago.
been sharing. Yeah.
Yeah, I got to perform with some terrific songwriters, and that's out on YouTube, so people can
Right.
check that out.
Yeah.
Um, and then I guess to maybe mention two more. I imagine one of the ones you might be sharing around was "Old Upright Piano."
Yes. Yeah.
So that's another angle I really like to take with songwriting is empathetic songs and songs from other people's perspectives.
Mhm. Mhm.
Um, that song started from the inspiration of reading an article about this guy that was trying to fix up old upright pianos and just sell them at cost.
Mhm.
And he had ended up not being able to continue doing that because it's hard to get rid of an old upright piano, let alone find somebody that will pay for it, even at
Right.
cost, to fix it. Which I thought was really sad because there was a time where these instruments were the center of a household and a family. You know,
Yes.
they weren't just furniture, like family gathered around the old upright piano. And then I started to think about parents that, a lot of parents are really great parents and make parenting a very big part of their life, but there are some parents that make it literally everything to the point where they don't even have friends, they kind of, because they're
Yeah.
just like their kids are their whole world.
Right.
And I imagined, well, for whatever reason, I made the connection of a woman whose husband had passed away and
Mhm.
her kids were off at school, and she'd lived her whole life as that that person that the family gathered around.
Right.
And now everyone's gone for one reason or another, and she has to reckon with who she's going to be now.
Right.
And that's in the feeling of self-worth and purpose.
Mhm. Mhm.
Um, so there's a lot of themes of that in my songwriting as well. And that in that case of old upright piano. If I can mention one more, and
Of course. Yeah.
it's in the works. It's actually the clip that I gave you for Listen Up Elora for your
Yes.
promo. It's the song No Soul Forgets.
Mhm.
This is a song that's recorded. I'm just working on the back end SOCAN stuff. Uh, I'm
Right.
I'm new to all this. I'm figuring it out, but
Sure.
I'm going to
Sure.
release it soon.
Yeah.
Um, but that was a song that I wrote because my grandmother was like diagnosed with Alzheimer's and then
Mhm.
experiencing dementia. I think that's how it works. It's There's the diagnosis of Alzheimer's and then dementia is its own thing. I
Mhm.
but I wrote it trying to understand what it might be like to be in her shoes.
Right.
Um, to be forgetting people and experiences and struggling to find words. Um, and just kind of facing mortality in the truest sense, you know.
Hmm.
Um, and I kind of came to this idea, the song "No Soul Forgets," as uh, regardless of your spiritual or religious beliefs, the idea that there is something about our essence that just always remains even when our mental state is deteriorating. Like there's
Sure.
some part of us that even when we're gone is just here.
Hmm.
Whether it's, in religious context, it would be like your spirit, or maybe in more like I don't know. I've heard like people that are kind of atheists, but uh, from a science perspective of like energy never goes away. It just I can't remember the exact phrase, but it just gets converted into something else in
Right.
the
Yeah.
universe, right?
Yeah.
And that I and yeah, so it's just the kind of the idea that there is some part of you that was and always will be, kind of, and
Hmm.
all while making peace with the end, kind of.
Right. Yeah, yeah, a lot of heavy themes, and I really like that your songs take, from your own experiences, your own perspective, but also putting yourself into the perspectives and the shoes of others. And creating lyrics and storytelling that is really rooted in the human experience, right? In a very fresh and non-cliche way, as I would, describe it. I think I'm trying to remember the name of the song, but you had put something about a cephalopod in your lyrics. I'm
Oh,
like, okay, props to Nolan for putting the word cephalopod in a folk song.
yeah, that's
Like,
cool car. Yeah,
yeah, yeah. What was the name of that tune? Sorry.
it was cool car.
Cool
Uh,
Car. Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Another
Yeah.
one of my more funnier.
Well, yeah, yeah, but
Yeah,
so, but then, taking us through the human experience, there's obviously going to be, the happy songs or the funny songs. There's also the sad songs or the more empathetic songs, like you're referring to, or the melancholy somewhere in between. But yeah, you go through a range of emotions, but you encapsulate the human experience in a really unique and fresh way. I really like the blend of your lyrical style with your playing and the singing and everything. It really comes together really great. And yeah, it's just really refreshing. That's the way I
thank
would
you,
put
man.
it. Yeah, so maybe we can shift gears now to talking about your experience performing live. Oh, and maybe one more thing before we switch there. So if you ever have any questions with like the SOCAN thing or whatever, just let me know. We can
Okay.
always talk about that, right? Like even distribution or when the time comes, I've got some experience with that. I'm happy to share. But yeah, so now shifting here, what has been your experience, performing live, connecting with your audience, finding places to play, the challenges, what's been great about it, maybe talk about just your experiences overall with that whole process.
Yeah, so I would say in my area, predominantly the shows are bar and brewery
Mhm.
shows, with the
Yeah,
exception of the odd summer festival
right,
kind of situation. I would say that makes up about 90% of them, and has since I was a kid.
right,
So being brought up in the blues folk kind of roots tradition, um, that's where I kind of cut my teeth as a performer. And I do love that, and there is a merit to those kind of gigs where it is mostly covers. You can sneak in a few originals if you're good about how you do it.
yeah,
Um, at the same time, you know, as as I was developing my songwriting, I was realizing like I need a different room to pull this off. You
yeah,
know, um, when you want to, some songs need silence.
mhm,
Silence is part of the music. There's that space where you take a breath and people can like actually just reflect on what they just heard, the lyrics.
yeah,
um and so I think I had that epiphany when I played a show in Hamilton, the Casbah, before it closed.
yeah,
I did a couple of writers events there, and what I noticed, it was I still say this, it was normally as a musician, when you walk away with very little pay and a small audience, you would be upset. But it was for me, I could not reconcile. I was like, oh wow, despite those two things, which normally in the bar scene is not a great thing,
Yeah.
I walked away from those gigs just feeling like elated, and I couldn't figure out why at first, but I realized it was because I was heard by all those people that were there, like genuinely heard, and they got the song in a way
Yeah.
that the other folks back home didn't get to, either because they weren't listening or they were trying to listen but they couldn't hear.
Yep.
Um, and that stuck with me to the point that that's where I even started my own songwriters rounds here.
Yeah.
And I'm also been looking for events like the one you do in Elora.
Yeah. Yeah. That's amazing. Amazing to hear that you've come to that realization, and I think it's an important one. And I can relate to that, very deeply. Back in my younger years, I hosted events of all kinds, different venues all over the place, and I had a classic, small town show with hometown hero bands of like six different bands, and I had this acoustic singer-songwriter open up, and she's incredible as a singer, if not one of the best singers there that night, but the room was really more geared towards, people wanted to rock out. And everyone was drinking. It was like, just like a very like rowdy crowd. And when she opened up, people weren't really giving her the attention that she deserved. I felt that in the room that, it just wasn't maybe the right context. And that really taught me a lot about context because maybe a couple of months later, I started, this new series at that time, uh, where I wanted to have a listening room is how I described it, right? So everyone who came through the door, I told them no talking during the performances. This is a listening room. You're meant to like listen to the lyrics and really engage and enjoy. And I had her headline that, of course. And people were just mesmerized by her. I didn't really have to fight with anyone and, to enforce the rules. They just kind of got it, right? And so it taught me a lot about context and presentation and how those two things really matter so much more for an artist, right? And you read about these like anecdotal, examples where you have, famous violinists who are making, $500 a ticket playing in a subway and everyone's just walking by,
Yeah.
and they could have seen them for free. And then, the next night they're performing in front of, hundreds, if not thousands of people for big money. So, yeah, context is really important. And, like you said, it's even aside from that, it's about the connection between artist and audience, right? Where you have a message to put out there. You're pouring your heart and soul into your lyrics, your songwriting, all these things, and you want people to be able to receive that, right? And you want people who are there to actually enjoy that and who want to be there, right? And more recently, I had been playing, country covers for the last 10 years and, sort of more of the other model you're talking about where, you're playing 345s and you're playing the bar rooms. Maybe some people, are dancing and engage and listen. Other people are just, kind of having their own conversations and music is a background, right? But you know, you're also playing other people's music, right? So you're not really getting a chance to necessarily do a lot of your own originals, and it's not geared towards that, where it's like really listening and a connection. Um, and the rooms are often very loud, and there's lots of kitchen noises and things like that, right? So, it's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But when I got back into writing originals again within like the last year or so, it reminded me of that experience I had hosting those events about 10 years ago and how I wanted that kind of, event or space or platform to exist again, at least in this community, somewhere around here where we are in Center Wellington now, right? So it took a while for me to, figure out the right partners to work with and, tried reaching out to other people in the community. And I ended up kind of just mobilizing it on my own, even though I didn't really intend to do that because it's hard to find the time to balance everything. But I am happy that I'm at least getting it to the point of existence, right? And I'm happy to do it. I love doing it. It's just always hard to find the time. But it's been great so far. We've had, I think this is number 6 that we have together coming up this Friday,
Yeah.
June 5th. So, really happy to do it. I partner with the Legion. It's like a volunteer effort. So after paying the artists, I just donate the rest of the profits to the Legion. And they were willing to work with me that way, and I'm happy to do it that way. And it's just a matter of like kind of building a community around listening events is kind of the hope, right? So yeah, really resonated with a lot of what you had to say there, and I really respect what you're doing in your community as well, right? Trying to create that listening space. I think it's very important. It's medicinal not only for, artists, but also for audiences, like to truly be present, right? And you get so much more out of it. It's like you don't go, watching a movie and, you know, have 10 different conversations or do something else. Although some people might, right? But if you
Yeah,
really want to enjoy a, cinema or film, like you want to be glued to the screen, you want to have that suspension of disbelief where like you're engaged and like you're enthralled in the art form, before you, right? So yeah, music shouldn't be any different, and yeah, there's a time and a place for everything, sure, but there's got to be a space for this, and I feel like that's kind of what's lacking in a lot of venues, communities. The culture of music listening is kind of harder to find, it feels.
yeah.
So yeah,
I gotta give it to you for doing it too, because like I know on my end, it's you feel like it's worth it once you're there and you're in that
yeah,
room and you feel everyone experiencing it. But I know there's a to put on your own show and to like try to move tickets and everything too to get people to see how cool this actually is when once you're in the room. It's I know on my end too. It's a little bit of a like it can be a grind at first,
for sure, for sure.
and you have to really be steadfast and sure and believe in what you're doing, um,
Yeah.
and you have to be willing to go the mile to put it on. So I give it to you for trying to create that space in your community.
Yeah, yeah, thank you. Thank you. And you know what? Like you kind of touched on it too, right? Like, playing the cover gigs or bar gigs, there's a guarantee, but you're not really, necessarily building a fan base for your own music, right? Those are kind of two different things. Sometimes they can overlap a little bit, but you need to kind of be in a space where you can play your own music for people who are willing to receive it, to really hear it and listen to it, right? So it's like, yeah, maybe you're playing in a room full of people, but how many of those people are really present, right?
Mhm.
So, you kind of have to pound the pavement and, play those types of gigs where, yeah, it's ticketed. Maybe, you have a smaller draw at first, but you got to work towards something, right?
Yeah,
That's very important because there's no shortcuts. You got to build something holistically with true fans, not just people who saw you play, Sweet Home Alabama, and then they never think about you again.
yeah,
They were entertained for those 5 minutes or whatever it was, and then you're in the back of their minds or a distant memory, right? So yeah, yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me. And so I guess, we touched on the concept of Listen Up Elora. We obviously share a lot of our, values and philosophies around live music and performance, which is great. And now, of course, we have, as we said before, Listen Up coming up this Friday, June 5th, doors at, 8. And yeah, really excited to share the stage with you. Again, we got a chance to meet and perform together in Paris, and yeah, I'd love to do it as often as we can. So, what would you like the people of Elora to know, the community of Center Wellington more broadly, before you come here? If there's any other, links or if a website or anything like that that you want to share with people, a message for them, anything you want to say.
okay. Well, first for links, if they want to find me, it's YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook, all at Nolan Gibson Music.
Perfect.
Um, in terms of a message, I hope that we just get to have an afternoon together, telling stories and kind of just having a cathartic experience
Yeah.
in relation to the human experience that we all go through from day to day. And I hope
Yeah.
it makes. I hope we can get you laughing. I hope if you do cry, it's cathartic and yeah. I hope we just share an experience together.
Yeah. Beautiful. Beautiful. Nolan, thank you so much for joining the call and really excited to hang out with you again, play music, and share the stage. So, yeah,
Thanks, Rick. I appreciate you having me on.
All right. Yeah. Have yourself a great night, eh?
Yeah, you too, man. See you Friday.
Yeah. See you then.